about extraterrestrials, UFOs, and alien abductions, you can't not hear allegations of a group of reptilian extraterrestrials that are here on Earth. But who are the reptilians? What are they doing on Earth? And what's their agenda? To help us explore this matter, we'll be speaking with David Icke about this controversial topic. David Von Icke is an English writer, public speaker, and former media personality, best known for his views on what he calls who and what is really controlling the world. Describing himself as the most controversial speaker and author in the world, he has written many books explaining his position, dubbed New Age conspiracism, and has attracted a substantial following across the political spectrum. His book, The Biggest Secret, has been called the conspiracy theorist Rosetta Stone. His webpage is davidicke.com, so please welcome David Icke. Hey David, how are you doing?
I'm good, Rita. Yeah, it's been a busy day, but it's nice to talk to you.
Well, I am just so excited to have you on the show, because if you had asked me 10 years ago if I believed reptilians existed here on Earth, David, I would just laugh at you, just right in your face. But after years of research into our mythic history, my opinion has vastly changed from being a skeptic to believing that, at a minimum, they had existed in our distant past. So how did you first hear of reptilians, and what caused you to believe that they even existed?
Well, first of all, if you're researching this information and so much other information that connects with it, then the first essential is an open mind. I've got a new book called Phantom Self, and Phantom Self is the construct self, the construct self-identity that people take on and believe is them. And I explain how it comes about. It comes about through parents, through the education system, through the media, and there's a certain download of perception. Mm-hmm. And that perception of reality is absolutely tiny. And it completely misses vast amounts of information, possibility that is there to be seen. But people have the blinkers on. They just see within this very tiny area of possibility. And so the first thing you start out with is an open mind. And, you know, I'm a great believer in something that the Greek philosopher Socrates is supposed to have said. Confucius had his version of it. There are many versions in history. And it's basically this: wisdom is knowing how little we know. And once you come from that point of view, it doesn't mean you believe everything, but it means you're open to all possibility if it stands up with evidence and information. And, you know, I don't know whether you know my backstory, but I went through, I was a television presenter with the BBC, and I went through this extraordinary series of, if you like, awakening experiences. And I was told at that time through a psychic that I went to try to find out what was going on, because I was feeling this presence around me all the time, and I didn't know what it was. And what came out of that meeting with the psychic was that I was going to go out, and this is now 26 years ago, 25 years ago. In fact, 25 years ago, this very month, when I think about it, it happened. I was going to go out on a world stage and reveal great secrets, and they would be guiding me to information and what I needed to know. And it'd all been planned a long time ago. There's many, many elements to what happened. That's the simplest version. So after that, I was still at the BBC at the time, though not for long. My life became a synchronistic journey of extraordinary apparent coincidences, but not, which was putting in front of me puzzle pieces, which were building a picture. And it started out in the early 90s with information pointing to what I call the 5 cents conspiracy, banking conspiracies, engineered wars, corporations, governments, media, secret society networks, and all those sort of things that were manipulating our world in a certain direction. And then around the mid 90s, and what kind of has tended to happen is a new subject will appear in my life, and suddenly information about that subject's coming from all angles. And it really started in about the 95-ish, 95, 96. I was traveling America, and in those days I was talking to nobody. It's different today, but in those days it was real early stuff. And in 15 days, traveling to a different venue a city every day, I met 12 separate people who told me that they had experienced seeing apparently a human person shift into a reptilian and back again. And the accounts were so compelling in their common themes. And what they said corresponded, even though they were across America. And from that moment, I just kept meeting people who'd had these experiences. And of course, then you start to pick up the historical accounts, which correlate with the modern accounts, which is extremely compelling. And that basically, you know, like all my work, it kind of built up layer on layer on layer on layer until it was very clear that A, the world's not like we thought it was, and B, that behind this, if you like, human conspiracy to direct the world in a certain direction, which is happening by the day now, there was this reptilian, non-human force in the background. But, you know, like in the book Phantom Self that's just come out, I take it much, much, much further than that. The reptilians are only part of the story. They're not the story itself.
Well, and I think we need to do a totally separate interview on that topic, on your new book, which sounds really interesting. I didn't even know about that book. And so I'm hoping we can talk reptilians today and come back at a later date and talk about that book, which I would love. Okay. Yeah. So I'm going to kind of talk about myth. And myth suggests that a half man, half serpent, a quote unquote reptilian fertility god first inhabited the earth. And their control was usurped by another group that I call the sky gods, which I attribute to the group of Nordic type extraterrestrials. Myth also suggests that the reptilians were the ones that were responsible for genetic engineering of humanity. But if we were created in his image, it seems logical that our heritage was a mix of an Earth species and this Nordic bloodline. Is it your opinion that the original breeding program was between an Earth species and reptilians? Or do you think that a secondary breeding program occurred that introduced reptilian genetics into the now human bloodline?
Well, I look at all these stories and all these so-called myths, and you know, I think there's been a lot of genetic interaction with humans from many sources, but what I'm looking at is the influence negatively on human behavior and human perception of the reptilian element of this. And one of the things that comes out when you look at these various stories, ancient and modern, is that this reptilian species, or this expression of it, not necessarily all of it, is obsessed with technology. And to them, technology is biological as well as mechanical.
Hey, David?
Yep.
I just lost... Oh, you're back.
All right.
I just lost the video feed, but you're back. So.
Oh, I shapeshifted then, eh?
Yeah, you did, to a big black screen.
Yeah. What I was saying is the reptilians, if you look at these common themes, are obsessed with technology, and to them, the biological is technological. I've been talking for and writing for decades about the fact that the body is a biological computer, And only the other day, to my great amazement, I was reading some comments by a mainstream scientist in Britain who was describing the body as like a biological computer. I mean, but that's what it is. And with a computer, you can program it. You can program it to decode reality as the programming dictates. So here we have if there was one here, if we had a Wi-Fi field, it would be an information field that we can't see, but the computer in front of me would decode that field into a whole reality called the World Wide Web, which can be picked up and experienced by anybody who can access it all over the world. It's a collective reality. Mm-hmm. And for me, what has happened is this reptilian tinkering, this reptilian manipulation of genetics, which is actually an energetic information manipulation, because there is no physical, it's holographic, has created a situation where humans, the human range of even visual perception, let alone the wider perception of reality, has been squeezed into a very narrow band. And when you think about it, the figures of what we can actually see are staggering. According to mainstream science, the electromagnetic spectrum is about 0.005% of what exists in matter, etc. Some say it's a bit more, but not much. And visible light, which is all that we can perceive as a visual reality, is a fraction of the 0.005%. Now, that range of perception is so tiny and so ludicrous compared with what there is to experience. It's my contention that that is not by accident, but by design. And interesting. See, we are not the body. The body is the phantom self. It's what we call our name and our life story and our race and our religion. These are all experiences. They're not who we are. And they build up the phantom self. And what happens is people become self-identifying with the phantom self, and they lose and this is, I also suggest, is by design. We lose the understanding that what we are at our core is awareness, a state of being aware. And when awareness takes holographic form to experience this tiny range of frequencies we call the world, it becomes entrapped in five-sense reality. And I say this is part of the program. If you look at the ancient accounts and you look at people like the Gnostics and the Nag Hammadi writings that were found in Egypt in 1945, amazing stuff, they talk in a common theme about humans being trapped in the body. And this is the same theme that I've been picking up. And it's my contention that this reptilian genetic manipulation has so manipulated the biological computer body's ability to decode reality and perceive reality that incarnate awareness becomes trapped overwhelmingly in the five senses. And what we call the awakening is the awakening from that entrapment, which is why when people go through this awakening, they suddenly start to perceive things in a much more expansive way. This is why near-death experiences talk about the fact that when they leave the body, when their awareness withdraws from the body, withdraws from the biological computer, suddenly they can see multiple realities at the same time. They realize there is no time. They realize there is no physical. And that's because their point of attention has been released from this focus of this prison type focus that this genetics has created. And that's why there is no solution to human enslavement unless humans awaken beyond this focus upon five sense reality. And if you look at the world and you look at the way it's structured, it's all to entice the five senses. Because if we only perceive the world through that, then the program has got us.
Exactly. You mentioned that the reptilians like technology, and do you think that's why? Okay, in the mythic record, it seems like the reptilians were always the one. They gave us fire. They taught us how to work with metals. They gave us technology
Yep,
at that point in time. So do you think that those stories were just part of their plan to get us to where we are now?
absolutely spot on. Um, Technology is modern technology, all the transhumanist technology and the smart technology that we have today is moving towards the culmination of this systematic entrapment. The point I've made in the books over the years is that this technology that we think today is so fantastic, so amazing, was actually been around right the way through the timeline of what we know as human history, a known human history. But if you give a computer and a smartphone to someone knocking rocks together, as a analogy, well, you're not going to get anywhere. So there has been a build up and a build up and a build up. And these technologies are being introduced at a certain point in this program of total human enslavement. And if you look at the way the world is controlled today and the way that it can be so centrally controlled, it can only happen because of computerization. So, was it just an accident that computers suddenly appeared just at the point where humans had the level of intelligence that could use them to entrap themselves? Is it an accident now that these transhumanist smart technologies are being introduced at such a fast rate now, which are enslaving humanity with an addiction, first of all, to their technology? No. What's happening is, and what has happened through human history, and the shamans have talked about this around the world. We have been brought to a point through what we call history where the intelligence to work with this technology at different points has been developed, but the greater awareness beyond intellect, which is what we're dealing with this technology, has not been developed. It's been suppressed. And to put it simply, humanity has been brought to a point where it's intelligent enough to enslave itself, but not aware enough to realize that that's what it's doing.
But I think that we've been doing that for millennia. I mean, just the concept of agriculture drove us into cities, made us do more work than hunter gatherers were doing, and created this whole social structure of labor and kind of the first level of enslavement that we found
Yeah, and that's
from
all
a
part.
voluntary level, from a voluntary level.
That's all part of it. I mean, I quote people, particularly one person in Phantom Self, who was an insider speaking in 1969. And he was describing in 1969 in detail, considerable detail, what was coming in the next few decades. If people read what he said in 1969 and look what's happening now in detail, it's absolutely extraordinary. And I would stress that this farming and manipulation of humanity in a certain direction is not even in theme, it's been and is in detail. And I've got a chapter in the book and I call it transphantomism. And what I mean by that is obviously transhumanism, but transphantomism refers to the next stage that we're being taken into, which is beyond just programming people to self-identify with the five senses, but to get technology, here we go again, in the body to further suppress and firewall off our connection to our greater infinite self. And so what's happened, it started with the technology, which moved on to things like smartphones. And when you look now at smartphones, I mean, it's unbelievable the addiction that people have to them, not least young people. And the process is what I call the totalitarian tiptoe. You start at A and you're going to Z, and you go in steps so that people don't see the pattern of where you're actually taking them. So it started in this smart era, which is really moving towards where they want to take us, with technology that we held, technology that we looked at on a screen. The next stage is what they call wearables. These is the Google Glass, these are the smart watches, etc. And the next stage is what they actually have a name for, called implantables. And I read an article in Forbes magazine just a few months ago talking about the fact that implantables would be as common as smartphones and whatever now in not too many years from now. And the idea is to get the implantables in there to make humans literally a computer terminal in terms of their perceptions on a global technologically generated sub-reality. And this sub-reality and all this reptilian and all the connections to the reptilians have been moving us through the centuries to this point. I've been talking in the books for years about the technologically generated sub-reality, and basically it's the Wi-Fi internet. And the reason that people like Facebook and Google and other companies are now rushing to put up satellites to fire Wi-Fi internet at every square inch of the planet is because Wi-Fi internet is needed as the basis of this sub-reality. And I saw a movie, was it last year, year before, called Transcendence with Johnny Depp. And for those who haven't seen it, you had Johnny Depp as a scientist who was seeking to create sentient technology. And he found that he was dying, and his scientist wife downloaded his consciousness onto a quantum computer, which is what the universe is actually, a quantum computer. And his consciousness made the internet conscious. And by this time, because it was a little bit into the future that the movie was pitched, we had what David Petraeus, who briefly the CIA, head of the CIA, called the Internet of Things. And this is now a widely used phrase. The Internet of Things is the plan to have everything connected to the internet, whether it's your fridge, your heating through an energy sources through smart meters, which are also, of course, Wi-Fi field. And the point in the Johnny Depp movie was through what we now call, we have a name for it, smart dust, nanotechnology, being breathed in by humans and being attached to humans, humans would also be attached to the internet, and therefore that conscious internet would be now dictating perceptions of everything, technology, human thought, human perception, all of it. And when you look at the speeches and announcements of people like Ray Kurzweil, the executive at Google, and Google are massively at the forefront of this transhumanist transformation. He is talking about by 2030, human thinking will be done by being attached to what he calls the cloud. This is this sub-reality that I've been writing about for years, and that gradually more and more of the cloud will do the thinking, and less of the human will do the thinking until there is no human. They're actually speaking out openly about this and selling it as if it will make you superhuman. It's fantastic. Actually, it will make us subhuman.
Well,
And
it
so
would
what
create like a hive mind.
a hive mind. You see, when you look at you know, Hollywood type movies, whether it's movies in theaters or on television, so much of this sci-fi stuff has been putting it in our face for years. And you'll remember the Borg in Star
I
Trek.
love the Borg.
And what were they doing? They were a technological type assimilated race that was assimilating people. And how were they assimilating them? By what they, you know, things like nanobots, which is what we call now nanotechnology, smart dust as they call it. And what humans are going through, Rita, in this time, which is why it's so interesting. Why I'm going around the world talking and open ended from very soon. America, Australia, Europe, everywhere, because 2016, 2017, 2018 are absolutely vital to get this across before this transhumanist door slams shut. And what we are looking at is literally humans being assimilated technologically into a hive mind, right along the lines of in theme of the Borg in Star Trek. And it's happening in front of our eyes, and it's being sold, like I say, as fantastic, wonderful, when actually it's the end of humanity if we let it continue to its end.
And so your belief is that this is actually a group of reptilians that are directing this action to control humanity?
Well, yes, but not only. I mean, you know, obviously, wisdom is knowing how little you know, so you're always learning more. And where I go with this in Phantom Self is um, the information that's come to me synchronistically, as it has for 26 years now, has led me to conclude very powerfully that actually what we're dealing with is, in the end, is something that is not in form at all. It's the equivalent of a self-aware computer virus. It has the ability to think, it has the ability to perceive, but it, at its core, is like a computer virus. It has not the ability to create directly. You give it a blank sheet of paper, it wouldn't be able to do anything with it. But you give it a piece of paper with lots of things on, and it can manipulate something that already exists. And what this virus, as I will call it, is doing is assimilating races, assimilating worlds. You know, like a computer virus takes over a computer, and then
Mm-hmm.
it can jump into another computer system, and it can take that over. Similar principle, in fact, very close to that principle, as I explain in detail in the book. And my feeling is that these races, like reptilians, or not necessarily the species in totality, but that which is manipulating Earth,
Mm-hmm.
is part of this assimilation. I think what we call the Greys are part of this assimilation, and they once you become infected and taken over by the virus, just like a computer, you start reflecting the virus, not the computer as it was before. And so, if you look at the whole principle of the assimilation, it's that a species is assimilated into something else, and then that species becomes that something else. And for me, this what we call artificial intelligence, because you know this is these buzzwords and phrases are thrown about. Oh yeah, everything's going to be run by artificial intelligence. That's what they say. That's what Kurzweil says, and all these other people. Artificial intelligence is going to run everything. To an extent, it already is beginning to. But the question then is, what is artificial intelligence? What is it? What is this force called artificial intelligence, which is actually going to control everything, including the human mind? And I would suggest that what we call artificial intelligence is actually this virus. And what's happening is a technological vehicle is being created, and humans are being manipulated to create it, a vehicle for this virus to take over everything. Because if you go back to the Johnny Depp consciousness taking over the internet in that symbolic movie, from that point of view, he could control human minds, human behavior, could control technology of all kinds, control domestic appliances, everything. Once you create, and this is what they're doing, this smart grid where everything is attached to it, whatever controls the smart grid controls everything else. What has happened? Everything attached to it has been assimilated into the artificial intelligence. And I'm
Okay.
suggesting that this...
On that note, we need to take a very quick break.
Okay.
So if you're enjoying the program today, I please hope that you subscribe to the channel, Just Energy Radio on YouTube, or visit our website, justenergyradio.com. Hi, this is Dr. Rita Louise. We hope you've been enjoying the program today. If you'd like to hear more from this guest or other guests we've had on the show, please visit www.justenergyradio.com.